All right, welcome to our first ever Sunday question and discussion wrap up. It's where we're going to take all the questions from our WhatsApp group for the week, as well as from the Ignite Facebook group while it's running, and just go over some of the questions that we thought would benefit from deeper discussion, and just maybe a little bit more context as opposed to just the answer. We can give some feedback behind it.
Yeah, I think sometimes we get asked the questions, and in the moment we give a quick answer because we know you're working on an offer, or it's time sensitive, and really we can go into more depth around the different scenarios or what that means or why we look at it the way we do. So it's nice to take the opportunity to give better answers or larger answers.
Larger answers, yeah.
To provide more understanding.
Yeah, I think we said more words just now than we would have in an entire WhatsApp message.
Exactly,
so it's easier to expand on those thoughts this way. So I'm going to jump right in. And our first one for the to get us started is about scripts. So this was posted originally in a real estate mastermind group and then got cross-shared into our regional Ignite group. And it was just somebody stating that what's everybody's opinion on scripts. And their opinion is that they don't really think that it's making a proper connection, that it feels robotic, and that really people want authenticity. And so it's kind of a naysayer to scripts.
Right.
Now, there was some good discussion. There's some great answers in there. But if you wanted to expand on it, what would you kind of say to that?
Yeah, and I think we hear this a lot, actually, especially working with the PC coaching, because I think when you're newer to scripts, and I don't know if this agent is new to scripts or not, I'm not sure, but I think when you are newer to scripts, it is one of those situations where they don't feel comfortable, and certain scripts aren't going to work for you.
Does that stop? I'm not sure. There we go.
But certain scripts are going to work for you at a high level, right? And so I think you have to be conscious of the fact that when you're getting started, scripts can feel uncomfortable and they can feel robotic because you haven't internalized them yet. But there's also a disconnect between why we have scripts, right? Not everything needs to be scripted. And the further along you get in your career, the more natural it all becomes because we already innately know what to say. We've experienced it. So our scripts become based on our knowledge and experience. When you're first getting started, they set you up for success. They give you the opportunity to direct a conversation, to lead someone to an answer, a yes or a no that you are looking for. They give you the words to say when you're not sure what to say.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what's important about the scripts at the beginning. And, in the one thing they talk about mastery and having to do something 10,000 times before you've been considered a master at it. And master doesn't mean excel. It just means that it's innate and that you know how to do it. And so if you can think about that, how many scripts have you said 10,000 times? And the ones we probably say the most, we don't even register as scripts anymore,
exactly.
Right?
It's just my answer.
It's
just my conversation.
And we answer saying like, well, I just know that.
Yeah.
But you know it because you were taught it somewhere along the way, or you learned it, you were exposed to it, and that became your script. And then you just said it over and over again when those situations occurred. And I don't believe a pre-written script is any different.
Yeah.
I think the disconnect comes from the discomfort. Right?
Yeah.
And that would be.
Yeah. And I think with this one as well, it's not just the discomfort, it's the mindset even around the word script. Like that you are giving an automatic response answer for any given situation, or you are just saying a preset amount of words. And that's not what scripts are. Like think of scripts as just good habits. It just comes automatically. And it's the easy way for you to make sure that you're covering all your points to make sure that you aren't missing anything out. Like a script really does a service to the client to make sure that you're addressing everything. Like if you are just kind of winging it and going in, it's a nice casual conversation, you're bound to miss things. And I know that for our team, like even in the past, because we're so relationship based, we're almost like this agent in the sense of like, we're just so authentic that sometimes we don't follow our set plan, even on our listing presentations. And we may come away with like, great client relationship, but there's times where we've forgotten to mention something at a listing appointment, or we didn't explain something thoroughly enough and it had to be explained again later. And that's because we didn't stick to the script. Like we're still going to be authentic when we talk about everything with our clients because that's who we are, but we deviated from the script. And so now something got missed. And so even if you look at it that way, it's a great reason to do it. And especially when you're newer and you don't have all the answers, practicing your scripts and knowing what targets to hit throughout a conversation or through a sentence or answering a question is mandatory. Like you need to be able to do that.
You need to know what to do and how to do it and what the process should look like. And maybe I think you made a great point. Like it could be the word script itself that's creating the issue, and
Yeah.
that's a dialect issue. Right?
Exactly.
So if you don't like the word script, or the word script in your head has a negative connotation, change the word.
Yeah.
Call it a plan. It's not a script, it's a language plan. It's a conversation
Plan.
It's a
Exactly.
listing plan. It's a buy plan, right? And then all of a sudden that starts to make more sense. You're like, oh, okay, it's just a plan around what I should say when I should say it. And at the beginning, you're not good at objection handling.
Yeah.
You've never been asked the question before. Why would you be good at it
Exactly.
unless you practice? And that's where scripts, plans, whatever you want to call them, they do come into play. It's like, if we don't work on how to answer a question, and then someone asks us in the moment and we answer it poorly, that could cost us money.
Exactly.
And,
you could come off as looking unprofessional or unprepared. And is that
or
you're
not
the way
knowledgeable.
or not knowledgeable? Is that the way you're going to represent me when buyers are asking about my listing or when other agents are negotiating with me?
Yeah.
And so having that language plan makes that much easier.
Yeah, and you can tie it into your bank account, right?
Yeah.
If you want the money to go into the bank account, you better have a plan.
Yeah, that's
How's
right.
Getting there, right? And that all ties together.
Yeah.
So the repercussion of not using your scripts or plans or not being prepared, and I think that's
really what it
way to
is.
see
Yeah,
that
it helps you
it
be
is.
prepared.
That the repercussion of that is an empty bank account.
Yeah.
Right, and that's a pretty big loss.
Yeah,
because you didn't want to read some words.
Yeah. Now I want to move on to the next one
Yeah.
so that we're short and concise. I will just add this one point that one of the commenters had mentioned that they're so well practiced with their scripts that they can have a normal conversation. I think her example was about hockey or something like that. It was like, we could be talking about the hockey game. You could prompt me with the script and my tonality, all that, nothing's going to change.
Yeah.
I'm just, because I know it so well. It's a part of me that's just me having a conversation now.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes when we start with scripts, it feels robotic because you're literally reading something that you haven't absorbed yet.
Right.
And so it is kind of robotic in
You're
that sense. So
learning it.
it's your practice that has to come from it.
Yeah, and on that note, if you don't have a script partner, get a script partner. And this is why we have them.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next question we want to talk about actually came from the WhatsApp group. I want to talk about the driveway.
Yes.
And what a driveway might be worth.
Yes.
Right. And so I think just to jump in, where we would start is getting all that information about the driveway, because it is just like everything you do a CMA for. There's so many tangibles. Like, what would you say a new kitchen adds to a house? Well, how big is the kitchen? What's the price point of the home? What's the quality of the kitchen? It could be anywhere from $7,000 to $100,000 or more, depending on the type of the home.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a starting point when evaluating anything for a CMA.
Yeah. I think you got to start with, is it the same amount of parking? Let's just start there.
Yeah.
Basic, right? If we're talking about a driveway equals parking, and that's where the value is. It's not in the driveway itself per se, maybe minimally. Right?
Yeah.
But it's in the parking. So is the parking the same as your comparable? Because if it is, then the only added value there is the aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just landscaping. And not that to say that landscaping is not valuable, it is, but when you're looking at a townhome, for instance, people are going to pay less for that additional landscaping than they are for $1 million plus home that has a beautifully landscaped front yard and everything, right? So there are variables. Especially
if we're only talking about like a 500 square foot driveway, let's say.
Which is traditional with the townhouse, right? That's normally what you're
I think that was when we were crunching some numbers, that was about the square footage we came with.
10 wide by 50 long, I think was the rough estimate of the driveway. And that's standard for any tandem 2-car parking. Townhouse driveway.
Exactly. And in the past, we've gotten quotes as low as $2,000 to repave a driveway. And then if you just want to do like an interlock border or something like that to make it look a little bit nicer, you could add a little bit more on from there.
Yeah.
And then if you want to do full interlock, you can spend a little bit more money as well.
Yeah.
But again, when I'm doing a CMA, I want to know about the quality of that interlock, how it's installed, more so than just what the paver actually is.
Right.
But there's a lot of times where interlock, they go up and down way more than, say, a paved driveway does, because they're all individual. It's so much easier for them to shift. It's so much easier for weeds to come up. So even though the material is more expensive, I wouldn't necessarily pay more for it.
Right. Yeah, and see, then we get into the argument of personal choice and preference. So it's like a pool. For some people, it's a big added value, and for some people, it's a cost and a headache, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, we're not getting into a pool conversation, but it's a smaller scale but similar variable. And then we haven't even touched on the fact that, is the interlock providing an additional parking spot?
Yes.
Because a lot of the time with townhouses, you have the single paved driveway, and then you have the pad, the interlock pad off to the side. That's not parking, but is parking because that's
exactly.
how people get around that bylaw. So we have to add that into the conversation, because if you're talking about it creating an additional parking spot, legal or not, there is added value there, and that's a different number, right?
Exactly.
And so I think that, it's getting all of the information. And one of the things I think you mentioned that I hadn't even thought about, but is a great point, is like, how was it installed? Because if that wasn't professionally laid and it was just put in by the owner to clean it up and make it look nice, there is, and you're going to be putting cars and weight on it. It's not just a walkway where someone's walking. You're putting vehicles on it at this point. Is that going to maintain and hold up? Because if it's not installed properly, then the paved driveway is actually more valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I would almost look at it, some of those that are interlock, I'd almost look at them as a negative, because I know it's going to cost me down the road. Like I'm going to have to pull that up, and then I'm going to have to remove that stuff. Right. So.
Yeah. And it's more expensive than just maintaining a paved driveway. Resealed and topped up over the years. Right.
Yeah. So I think we don't have a firm answer, obviously, in how much you would add or subtract for a driveway on every house. I would say look at the size of the driveway. Is it comparable to the other driveways first? Is the parking amount the same? What's the state of both driveways in terms of the condition that they're in?
Location.
Location's
huge, because a parking pad downtown
is worth more than a parking pad in the city.
Than a parking pad in Aurora,
absolutely.
Or in Barrie, or in Keswick or something. Our price, we just have different parking variables. So that's obviously relevant as well. Now, obviously, most of us are more north in our working, but occasionally if you're doing a study or something downtown, you have to think about that.
Yeah. The other thing is price point of the home. Like low price points of homes, say at a $500,000 or $400,000 home, that add-on is not going to net as much for a seller in the long run as, say, like the kitchen upgrades and stuff like that. Whereas like a kitchen upgrade at $1 million price point is going to be worth more than a kitchen upgrade at the $400,000 price point. That's just kind of how it works. And so we just have to be mindful of that as well when we look at driveways. Like a driveway on a $1.5 million home is definitely going to add more value if it's done up compared to the driveway at the lower price point at the townhome, right? Because then there is more landscaping, there is more square footage. It is more of a wow factor potentially at that home.
Yeah, and traditionally people are spending more money on more expensive products.
Price range, exactly.
Higher and better quality, so you're paying for that.
Yeah, if you're doing an annual investment in your home of 1% of the home, that's a very different investment at 1.5 than it is at the 400,000 in terms of your annual maintenance, updates, improvements. Right.
Yeah. And so I think kind of to sum that one all up, it really is based on the variables of the scenario. However, obviously, having an extra parking pad and parking spot is going to add value, and you have to allow for that. Interlock versus paved as a base driveway, when they offer the same thing, it's arguably the buyer's option. They either like the paved, they like the interlock. I would argue the same as you. I would prefer paved. I think interlock has bigger issues, more costs down the road. So I wouldn't perceive that personally as an added value, but aesthetically, it could be. So you've got
throw a nice border around the edge, and I'll be happy about it.
Keep the tarmac in the middle.
Exactly.
That's what I want to park.
Now, if you're doing a stamped concrete, then I'm willing to pay a little bit more.
That's a whole other conversation, and that is different.
Absolutely. I say we wrap this one up and move on to the next, which I think you brought to the table. I'm not sure what those other two questions were.
It was a side conversation with one of the agents just regarding an offer scenario. So I'll run you through it really quick. These people have been in multiple offers a couple of times now, 13 offers, 20 offers, I believe 46 offers, which is insane on one of the properties. And they're just kind of at that point, where we get to with buyers where they're just sick of losing. So they're trying to do everything they can to optimize their offer. It is a condo that they're looking at. It's a lower price point, obviously. And the question came up regarding closing date and status certificate. So the question was, can I do a 15-day closing with a status certificate condition?
Yes.
Right. So I'm
nervous.
There's variables beyond just the status certificate closing. First of all, it's not up to us. You got to check with your lender. You got to check with your lawyer with COVID and everything happening. Right now, 15 days probably isn't long enough
that's scary
to
tight.
Navigate a closing. On top of that, obviously, there's the factor of the status certificate. So the initial conversation then has to be, is the status certificate ready right now?
Mhm.
Or
Are we ordering
are
it?
we ordering it? And also, are we talking about not putting in a condition, or are we talking about putting in the condition?
Mhm.
Right.
So where do we want to start?
So I think let's start with not putting in the condition versus
Yeah.
putting in the condition, because that's bigger.
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, blessed to have started this so long ago when we weren't in such a competitive market. And there was never a time that I ever dreamed of not having a status certificate in there. Sure, get rid of financing and home inspections,
Yeah.
but no status certificate.
Status has to stay.
Well, I don't know why that one had to stay, but it definitely did,
It was
right?
a rule. It was
Yeah.
steadfast for a long time. Right?
Yeah. And so I have seen deals, and I'm pretty sure I even did one maybe 2 years ago without a status certificate condition. And so how I evaluated that first was, one, I knew it was on hand, so I knew we were getting it close, but not that that really would protect my client at all. It was more so I had seen that there was like 5 or 6 other units that had sold recently. It was a reputable building. I was kind of familiar with it. So in that sense, I felt semi-safe to do it.
Yeah.
It's still a massive risk because there's still, if there's lawsuits or anything that happened recently that I would maybe not aware of, or that even the other guys hadn't been aware of, then, you know, it could be an issue for our lending. My client could have to incur costs because of that, then special assessment that might have to happen because of the lawsuit or because of something else that happened. So yeah, it's definitely risky. It's still not one that I feel very comfortable with, period.
Yeah.
Is the best place to leave it, because there's so many little factors that could pop up. You know, and then if you're getting into like a specific client that even has, you know, a pet or something to that effect, or there's a bylaw that we don't know about, then, you know, that's even a smaller issue, but it's still a big issue that your client's going to be upset about.
Well, I've had that scenario before. I was working on a condo sale, and it was an older lady. She had a cat. She had a cat for years, and we were looking at a condo in a building that mainly older people moved into and kind of retired into. It was a nice building. I'd put many people into it. Never realizing that there was a bylaw about no pets in the condo documents, and it was, you know, through the status certificate and the review, because it was so important to her that we looked into that further and discovered that this was going to be an issue.
Yeah.
Now we talked to the property management company. It was one cat. It was older. They were like, just bring the cat in. Like, you're not going to do anything about it, but technically you're not supposed to have a cat. It turned out after, like, people had dogs. Like, this rule was not followed, but it became a concern.
Because ultimately it's still in the bylaws that if somebody wanted to point to them, that'd be an issue.
We hadn't flagged that from previous deals.
Yep.
And so if we had gone in without that status, and then they hadn't enforced that rule, she would have been in a position of getting rid of her cat that she'd had for, I think it was like 12 or 13 years. Like,
it would have been an issue for sure.
Big problem. And she wasn't going to buy it if she couldn't bring the cat.
Exactly.
So it was a full conversation. And I think, like, where I land on the status certificate thing is, to me, it's due diligence, right? When you're buying in a condo, you need to know what the financials are. You need to know what the reserve fund is. You need to know if there's any lawsuits, any special assessments.
Yeah.
You know, what's the time plan? What's the budget for the next 2 to 3 years? What are they laying out? What are they planning on renovating? Right?
Yeah.
Because there's also future potential costs that you could incur after a year or two that maybe aren't fitting into your financial budget per se right now.
Like in year 3, they're gonna up that because they need to either save up more money or because they're fixing an elevator or whatever it may be.
Yeah. And so I would argue that as a buyer's agent, when it's our job to provide all of the information, and it solely falls on us, it's our responsibility to do our due diligence on behalf of that client. If we don't do it and an issue comes up a year or two from now, that's on us.
Exactly.
So that would be my concern in regard to my agents not putting that condition in. Now, sometimes I've been in scenarios where the agent already has the status certificate, and so they'll send it to me.
If you can get a look at it,
offers, and I can get it to a lawyer to review, so I don't need that condition because I have the content, I have the document. Then that's different, right? Then go for it. But if they haven't even ordered it yet, you can't take it out. Like, you just can't. And if you are, you're rolling the dice.
Big time.
Will it work out? Possibly, and probably in 90% of cases. But there will be the times, the unpredictables.
Exactly.
Right? You want to protect yourself and your client.
And if we're even going on those numbers roughly, say it's 90%, and there's 20,000 condo deals that go through a year. Look at that 10%. That's a big number still that's going to have an issue of some sort. And usually it gets caught because there's a status certificate review and condition. Anyways, if none of that scares you enough, I think it comes right down to the lending. The main reason why I would be concerned about that also when looking at the short closing is the lender won't provide the money until they've looked at the status certificate and they know that what they're lending on is safe. So if you're worried about, like, say it hasn't been ordered yet, if somebody's looking for that short of a closing, they should have the status certificate ready.
Yeah, you would think.
They should have it ready to hand off.
But we know that that's not always the case. And in this situation, and we'll get into that this second with the timeline, that is the case. There is the status certificate has not been ordered. Yeah.
So then my opinion would be just that it's too tight. And in general, not having that either ready to go to the lender and to the lawyers, or having to wait on it, or just not having it reviewed, you're jeopardizing your lending more so than anything else. And if you can't get the money, then your client is in breach of contract, and then it's a bigger issue.
Yeah.
So that would be my main concern.
To pile on to all of this, because I think we're clearly leaning to the one side here. It's pretty obvious, but there are also buildings that are red flagged, right?
Yep.
And certain property management companies that lenders know don't have a great reputation.
Yep.
And now that'll obviously, when you submit the actual purchase and the address is on there, it'll flag automatically.
But if you're going in firm without a status certificate, then you're not getting this reviewed by a lender beforehand. Hopefully you've sent it to your mortgage broker beforehand so that they can at least run the property address and let you know if it's flagged.
Right, but if you haven't, which maybe people don't think to do in a lot of cases, or don't know.
Because they're thinking about the money, right?
Yeah.
Like, I know that we're good in this budget,
yeah,
but we don't know if we're good in this building.
And that's a huge thing we have to take into account. If you go firm with no financing and no status, and you buy in a building that's flagged, you cannot get lending by majority of the A lenders on those buildings, and potentially, depending on the building, some of the B lenders. So now you've got a firm deal and no money.
Exactly.
Or you're going to a C lender to get it, which means you're paying crazy interest rates and fees and all sorts of stuff, and you might not have the money to cover those costs, right? So it can become a really slippery slope if you're not conscious of making sure that the lender, the lawyer, are all on the same page about the building and about the status and the reserve fund and the financing and all of it before you firm up on that deal. Condos are they seem like easier deals, but they're really
there's more to it behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, those status certificates can be hundreds of pages long sometimes. So
there's for the PDF. Remember I had to go pick them up, and they were like this big in brown envelopes.
Yeah. I remember once I had to pick it up on a CD.
Yeah,
it was on a CD. I go pick up a CD.
Yeah,
that was the first version of the digital.
Yeah, that was the original digital. So the other side of this conversation is timeline. Yeah. Obviously, in a scenario where you're putting that status certificate in, a status certificate, they legally have 10 days from the time you order it to provide it, and then you get 3 days, generally 3 days for lawyer review. So that's a 13-day window. So if you're looking at a 13-day window, can you do a 15-day close? Right?
Yeah, like that's too tight of a time to get mortgage direction and everything sorted to the lawyers from the lender. I mean, in the past we've done some pretty quick closings, but that's pretty tight. And there's a lot to it for sure.
Yeah, and I would say that in our current environment with
COVID and everything's taking a little bit longer.
Virtual and home, like I just wouldn't put that pressure. The last thing you want to do is have to extend the closing.
Yeah.
When it wasn't necessary. You could do a 20-25 day close, give yourself that 10-day buffer between the status and the closing date.
Yeah.
Or that, whatever, how many 13 days or whatever it is. Lawyers aren't gonna be happy if you give them a closing date where they've got to, wait for the status, then review the status, and then close it 2 days or 3 days later. They're just
arrange all the title insurance, arrange everything.
With the lenders, all of that.
Even just getting in touch with the seller's lawyer, like all of it's a headache. And if you get one person in there that slows it down, and it might not even be a person that you can contact. It might be somebody behind the scenes that you just don't even know. Yeah.
And on top of that, they're not just processing your file.
Exactly.
They're doing however many they're doing that day that are closing, and there's always closings, right?
Yeah.
So I think realistically, at a minimum, I would say you're 20 to 25 days.
I think
there's no status ordered.
Yeah.
If it's ordered, arguably you could maybe make the 15 days work.
Yeah, if you've got it in hand, then you can get it to the lawyer, have them review it. And then just go firm like you want to. It's no different than anything else. Yeah, but that's if you have it in hand. Yeah. Because let's do a detached home. Could you close a detached in 20 days?
Sure.
So I think it's just the having that status on hand, and then everything else is a wash.
So let's preface that by saying current times right now. Yeah. Check with your lender. Check with your lawyer. Get their go ahead, because if they're backlogged and you can't close, that's on you, and you could incur costs on on the seller's side that you have to cover because it's your delay.
Yeah.
right?
I would still feel very uncomfortable even with a 20-day close.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, I'm like anything less than 30 right now scares
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's doable. 20 to 25 is doable if
Yeah.
you want to push it through and everybody's on board for
Yeah.
sure. And on that note, if you are listing a condo or anything like that, you know,
Order your status.
Order status, but
Yeah.
I do also there is the other argument of that know your area.
Yeah.
Because if you're in downtown right now, status is only good for the 3 months, right?
Yeah.
And if you're listing and you're not selling for 90 days or
Yeah.
120-day average, you're gonna have to pay twice.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
try and time it, right? Figure it
Yeah.
out. If you feel like you got a lot of traction,
Yeah.
maybe order it at that point, or wait and just know that, you know, I'm gonna wait till it gets ordered so it's in the right time frame.
Yeah,
But I also know that I can't ask for a quick closing if that's what I'm doing.
exactly. Know what your scheduling marketing time is. How long you think it's going to take you to sell? Is it going to be in the first week? Is it going to be in the first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days?
Mm-hmm.
And gauge that based on, you know, past performance and what's going on, not just in your building, but the buildings around you, the community, so that you're very aware of that.
Yeah, and if you don't know how to do that, it's a CMA. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Do a CMA of all the condos.
Yeah,
in your
branch it out.
area and look at Market Watch, look at the condo report, get the data, get the
Mhm.
stats, and then break it down from there.
Yeah. Yeah. So we hope you enjoyed this video. We plan to do more in the future. It's going to be our Sunday tradition now.
Sunday weekly wrap up.
Sunday weekly wrap up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, guys. We'll see you soon.
See you guys.